Today we're speaking to Mick Jarrett, who spent his career with the Devon and Dorsets.
I wasn't the brightest spark on the planet. I wasn't heading to go to university. In those days, you didn't go to university as a matter of course. You went because you were at the top echelon of your school, your education. I was heading to be a bricklayer, a craftsman, bricklayer, carpenter, mechanic. I could have been any one of them. That's an interesting point, which is certainly not the case nowadays. But I could have left school and I could have taken about 5 trades, depending on my level of education and how hard I worked at school, whether I could cope with the training and whether I could cope with the further education. But a lot of my family were Army, right going back to great-granddads. A very benevolent uncle suggested that the Army might be a good choice. So I went for it. But as soon as I started inquiring about the Army, I realised what a fantastic opportunity there was. First of all, leaving my hometown, which I had absolutely no interest in, and joining and going around the world, full stop really. And then I joined up and I became a junior leader at Oswestry in Shropshire. And as I said, you're taught to be the future warrant officers, sergeants, warrant officers, and senior NCOs of the British Army.
What year did you join there?
I joined in September the 13th, 1960.
What was the coolest place you went when you did your service?
What was?
What was the coolest place that you went during your time
Coolest
serving?
place? Yeah, that's another jolly good question. Guyana. Fabulous country. Fabulous country. And we were lucky because we rotated between keeping them apart and what we used to call it then adventure training. You probably call it something different nowadays, leadership training or whatever. And we went all over Guyana, in the jungles, up to the tallest single waterfall in the world. As it was then, I think they've discovered another one since then. But that's trekking up in dugout canoes and along the side of the river, the Essequibo and the Amazons. Fabulous. And the social life for a young lad of 18 or 19 was unbelievable. I don't really need to elaborate.
So that must have been quite a difference going from Shropshire, was it? You were training in to Guyana.
To Guyana. I went first of all. The regiment was based in Plymouth, and I joined them. And then they went to Northern Ireland, and in Northern Ireland we went. So I was a private soldier. So I was 17, 18, 19, possibly. It's hard to explain. Some of these postings that the guys get are absolutely terrific. You know, I've got friends that went to Borneo and they did jungle training with youngsters like yourself. Amazing opportunities. Not quite so like it is today, I'm afraid, but we had, like we used to call it the salad days. You know what I mean by the salad days? It means the good times. Also, I liked Kenya. Kenya was good because we were on the equator in Nanyuki, and within our base camp we were about an hour and a half to 35 degrees, 40 degrees, and almost desert, to the total reverse, always raining, always wet, always damp, the other way. So in a day you could cover all the climates. It was such a varied climate. Nairobi was a fabulous climate. as was Mombasa.
Did you have a specialism in the army?
Searching in Northern Ireland was my main sort of specialist training. With the army, you do so many jobs. When you're a lance corporal, you're with a full corporal, and you look after 8 men. And all that matters in your small little world then is your 8 men. And you're looking after the corporal's looking after everybody, if you know what I mean. And then when you get to sergeant, it's a totally different. You've got 30 odd men to look after and administrate. And then you throw in a young subaltern who's very, very green, and you've got to basically train him. And if he's the right character, eventually it takes a while, but he does shape up, and he takes over and he becomes a leader. And by the time he's the second a lieutenant, he's had all the experience given to him. Then you get a sergeant major, and as you were, colour sergeant or staff sergeant, you might know it as. And the staff sergeant looks after all the rations, all the clothing, what the chairs you're sitting in, everything to do with administration is a colour sergeant. So if you lose something, you have to go to him and pay for a new piece that you lost. Unless you've got a very benevolent colour sergeant who will find one somewhere. That's what usually happens. And when you go on exercise and when you go out in the field, he's responsible for the chefs and looking after all the administrative stuff. Then you get the sergeant major, the company sergeant major, and you're responsible for 110 blokes. And everything they do. Mostly discipline, and mostly giving everybody the experience that they need, especially the senior NCOs, because if they've got anything about them, they're going to be a sergeant major one day. And then you move into what I call flying the desk. And then you're a quartermaster, and you're looking after, again, rations, food, but in a much bigger scale. And then from then, if you're selected, you become a regimental sergeant major. And you're the one person in a battalion of 750 men, who's a unique position. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. In fact, what it says really is that there was many specialisms, wasn't there?
Oh, sorry. Yes,
Yeah.
I wander off nowadays.
It's all right.
Yeah, there are many specialists. But within an infantry regiment, it's usually management, leadership. Of course, you've got to be good at weapons. You've got to be good at shooting. You've got to be, you've got to know how to look after your kid and teach other people how to look after their kid. It's like a huge family. An infantry regiment moves in its entirety every time. They don't go to one unit for a couple of years, then go to another unit for a couple of years. They serve together for the whole of their career within the infantry. And as I said, a battalion really is a family. But I feel quite strongly about Northern Ireland because I've seen both sides. I've seen a wonderful country, chock full of hospitality, and then I've seen it turn into a mean, depressed, really sad country. I'm talking about Northern Ireland now. It doesn't hold a candle to Dublin, because Dublin was a fabulous city. It was a fabulous city then, but I haven't been back. I don't think I want to go back. I want to remember riding in Phoenix Park and the nights at the Keeling, and some fabulous times. Just right for a youngster. I was so lucky. So lucky. When I compare my life to yours, and people that I know, and my sons, and my friends' children, I had a fabulous time. You're living in a room with 10 blokes, 12 blokes, 15 blokes, and you're all getting up at night, and you're all wandering off to the loo, and you get up in the morning, and it's a family. it's so hard to explain. It's a great life. But I don't know what it's like now because I'm not involved in it as such. I'm not at the coalface anymore. I very much regret not going to Afghanistan. But all the rest of it was good. It didn't answer your question. Did it answer your question, or did it vaguely answer your question?
I think.
What do I think of Northern Ireland now,
Kind of
or then?
division of Ireland. Where do you stand on that?
Division. Oh, let me put it this way. When we first got to Northern Ireland, our very first tour, I was on the beach in Malta, in Malta, with my family. Okay, and a Land Rover came along into the beach, set up a microphone and loudspeakers and said, all members of the Devonshire and Dorset Regiment be on parade at 8 o'clock tonight with all your kit. So took the family home into our little flat, packed all my kit away and said goodbye. And that the following morning, about 3 o'clock in the morning, I was on the way to Belfast. Just like that. And that's where it happens. Well, you used to anyway. I can only speak from those years. And then when we arrived in Belfast, we were posted to the Falls Road, the well-known Catholic area. Umpteen cups of tea and sticky buns were coming. Oh, it's unbelievable. But people were lovely. The baddies were not so lovely. And the whole of the city was crawling with soldiers, basically. And I can remember that first time we landed, and we had all the hot country stuff, you know, the sand-coloured helmets and everything was old, the older stuff. Of course, we arrived out there. The rest of the soldiers were all wearing this posh kit, what we call posh kit, you know. And then we just kept going for about 72 hours. And I remember guys just falling asleep where they were. You had to go around and dig the sentries every 10 minutes, because you can guarantee they'd be asleep standing up. And all the rest of the guys were all sleeping on the pavements. Good times. They're tough times, but they were good times.
You said that Guyana was your favourite place that you've been. Do you have a particular memory from anywhere that stands out as, like, you know, your favourite memory from anywhere that you've served?
Yeah, I have, but I don't think I could put it on there.
Do you have a second favourite memory?
Yeah, my trip to Kaito Falls. That's what stands out above everything else. And my first time living in a jungle, and all you had was the hammocks and your poncho. A poncho is like a ground sheet, like a waterproof sheet, and you'd find a tree that was close enough and not too far apart, as it were, you know what I mean. And put your poncho up on top, string it up on top, and kip in there, and that takes a lot of getting used to. And then in the morning, the absolute cacophony of howler monkeys screaming overhead. I mean, the noise is unbelievable. A howler monkey, especially when they're all together in their own troops. Yeah, lovely. I enjoy Guyana because I made so many friends out there. Really nice guys, Indian and black. They were absolute. We had some really good times, and off duty was unbelievable. Yeah, I won't labour on that.
Have you been back to any of the places that you served?
Yes, I went back to Malta, and I was disappointed because I hardly recognised where I lived, let alone the rest of the island. But I went up the new territories and the borders and all the rest of it, like everybody does. And Hong Kong was pretty good. I didn't like real Chinese food. There's nothing like what you buy downtown. absolutely nothing like it.
At the Keep, what do you do? Like, what role do you do at the Keep? Like volunteering?
Sit over here at the end of the table, and there's 4 or 5 of us work on a Wednesday morning, and we've all got our projects to deal with. At this moment of time, we're writing a book. I'm not writing a book. There is a book being written, and it's 50 names, and it's all people centred around the museum at some stage. Somewhere in the museum is their life story, if you bother to dig it out and find it interesting. I've just finished a couple of pages, 500 words. So I'm able to help anybody else that's busy. My opposite number sits opposite me is a lady called Jean.
We met Jean. Jean
You've
come and
met
chat
Jean?
to us as well, yeah.
Yeah, Jean does the yeomanry. And I help Jean quite a lot because she has some really tedious work to do. Trying to, or particularly the topic she's doing at the moment, which I think is listing all the Dorsets and the soldiers that were from Dorchester. And believe you me, I mean, I think there's something like 1,500 guys were killed from Dorchester, and says, oh, my Uncle Fred was in the Dorsets. Oh yes, give me his regimental number. If they've got it, they have. If they haven't, where did you live? And we were trying to plot where everyone lived and their basic information, so somebody could come in and find out all about them.
Is that over a long time? Is it?
Sorry?
Is it a particular time period?
It's the 2 main wars.
Yeah.
Yeah, the 2 main wars. And it'd be very difficult to go in it any further, really. I mean, there's a ceremony not a ceremony, what I'm talking about. There's a service in Sherborne Abbey, and it's on the 3rd Friday of each month. And a load of us gather in the chapel, which is one of the ladies' chapel in the abbey there. And the names, so many names from each particular war or action are read out. And when they get to the end, they start at the beginning again. So everybody's welcome. Just because we're servicemen, anyone who wants to attend can come along and see what goes on. Where there's 15 names of all the servicemen in the Dorset Regiment. And then there's 15 from the Dorset Regiment, the Second World War. And then there's 12 from recent conflicts like Afghanistan and all the rest of it. And then there's the people that were killed in Sherborne itself, civilians. It's a very poignant service. We ever get 10 minutes on a Friday morning.
What time of the day is that?
Sorry?
What time of the day?
11 o'clock.
11 o'clock.
Yeah, it starts at 11. We get a bugler to play the last post. Not always particularly well, I'm afraid, but in the main, and the heart's in it. It's well worth it. Anyone's welcome. Yep. Any more about Northern Ireland you're interested in?
I think from what you're saying, the group was quite interested in just what it was like being there day to day. Like, what was the environment like? What was the atmosphere?
24/7. Yeah. You were. There's 3 cycles. You were out on patrol, or the next cycle would be guarding the base, and the next cycle would be administration, and the last cycle was your own going to sleep, relaxing, chilling out within the confines of the base that you were in. You weren't allowed out. So it's very, very, very tiring. And you try and go on patrol. You do a 24-hour patrolling, and you're out for 4 hours. You come back in for 2, go out for 2, you'd come back, and you come back and you for 6, and it works like that. It's non-stop. When you're resting, you're sleeping. It's a pretty gruesome tour.
Presumably your families didn't go with you to that operation.
No family. It was usually a 9-month tour. But there again, you see, we had loads of tea stops, particularly in the Protestant area, as opposed to the Catholic area. But at the beginning of the Troubles, for the first 2 years, the guys were always sticky buns and cups of tea round every corner. The hospitality was amazing.
And at the
But
beginning,
I knew it when it was good.
Yeah, at the beginning, am I correct in remembering that the idea was to actually separate, try and keep the two sides from fighting each other? Is that how it began from your?
That's how it began.
Yeah.
And then the peace lines went up,
Yeah.
and then really it was a matter of just trying to catch the baddies and patrolling and making sure that if anybody was doing something untoward, we tried to catch him. We had loads of people lying up in derelict buildings, 24/7.
Keeping an eye on things, isn't it? Yeah.
And they weren't known to. They weren't there. They would just pick some pretty obscure building and they'd go and lay in there for 24 hours, or sometimes a couple of days. And then you've got to pee in a bag, you've got to poo in a bag, and you've got to, it's pretty, and you don't have much room to move. Normally you've got about a space of this table, less than the space of this table to stay for 24 hours, because you can't move around. You've got movement and you get noise.
And how would you get out of that situation? How would you, get away from that without being spotted?
Well, there's ways of going in,
Yeah.
and there's ways of coming out. Going in, you'd go out with a patrol, say 2 or 3 patrols of 7 or 8 men, and you drop off, and one patrol would suddenly not be there,
Yeah.
and they'd have gone to where they're meant to be.
And presumably you did all that prep before you actually left the building,
Oh yeah, the place was really, really well sussed out. Checking to make sure there was, kids didn't use it as a playground, and there's so many things to take into consideration.
Was it very intense on your mind when you were there? Was it
All the time.
all the time? Yeah.
All the time. Because you got eyes in the back of your head. You're looking all the time. What's he doing? What's she doing? You're looking for markers. You're looking for things on the road. You're looking for a piece of ribbon in the hedge. You're looking for a black door handle. You're looking for all these telltale signs where the ground's been marked by the IRA, and there's a gun trained on that particular point. It's non-stop. It's like being on a driving test all the time, and you know what being in the driving test is like. How nerve-wracking it is. On edge all the time.
Was it hard to readjust once you left the Devon and Dorsets to kind of doing a
routine job?
To not being in service anymore?
Again, that's quite a good. You get used to it once you're away from the family. I spoke to you about the family of 750 men. There was a time when I would know nearly every single guy in the regiment, if not by name, by face. Where you're taken away from that environment and you're working, on your own, basically. Like-minded guys working with you from other regiments, etc. But yeah, then you get to the point at the end of your career and they introduce computers and everything else, and you're thinking, oh God, I don't want this. I dread doing the accounts, dread doing this. Get so angry when you were asked to produce statistics that somebody else could have got up the link. And you get a little bit long in the teeth and you think, And then I was glad to leave. even though I'd done 40 odd years, I was glad to leave. Because the youngsters coming up behind you, they need your job. When they should be giving the youngsters the opportunity to go in and take over from them.
So you're seeing all these kind of Northern Ireland movies based around the conflicts, kind of really intense IRA gunfights with the army. How realistic would you say that is?
The most realistic one I've seen was Belfast, which I thought was extremely good. Was it Kenneth Branagh?
Yeah, the black and white one that's
Yeah.
just come out.
Yeah, that was probably the most realistic I've seen. I've seen a couple of others which I thought were a bit fanciful. I'm being truthful. When something doesn't, if you were fighting every day and you were coming across incidents, you were having bombs every day, it doesn't happen like that. It happens once a month, perhaps not once a month, perhaps once in 2 months, perhaps once a week, perhaps once a day. And it's so, but it always seems, when you see it depicted in the films, to be a sort of, it's hard to explain. It's like being in Dorchester, and just imagine, say, about a breakaway group from your school. So say about 20 students decided to, a little bit strange, and they decided to go out with a rifle and start killing people. So easy, isn't it? So easy. It's nothing difficult about killing people. You put yourself in a position where you were, let's say you were in the Army Cadets and everything else fell over, and you were responsible for looking after Dorchester. How would you go about it? There's 20 students from your school, all in different places, all with their own little networks, all plotting against you. How would you deal with it? Because you wouldn't know. There's no enemy as such because the enemy is not known. You don't know the enemy. I don't walk down the road in Belfast and say, well, he's a baddie, he's a baddie. You don't know. You have no idea. No idea. That's the worst part of Belfast. You're in a lovely city that is being ruined by a handful of people. I know some lovely Irish people. And I had a fabulous time when I was there, back in early 60s, before the Troubles. It was there was 18 dance halls in Belfast. 18 dance halls. And the girls lined the walls of every one. And there you are, a young soldier, you clean your nails, you've got shiny boots, you've got a collar and tie on. But it was a fabulous city, Belfast. Fabulous city. I loved it until it went bad, but there you are.
I'm really intrigued as to whether you've seen the TV series Derry Girls.
I was going to ask that.
Have you seen it?
Oh,
It's
no.
about a group of 4 Irish teenagers, and the whole kind of basis is with it being set in the Troubles. I think it's in the 90s.
It is.
It doesn't focus on the Troubles. It's kind of, you get glimpses of it.
It's in the background.
It's the first day of school on September, and they're on the bus, but then suddenly English soldiers get on the bus and start checking it, but they don't acknowledge it. It's very
Take it for granted.
Where in the background it's kind of showing how normalised it was for teenagers in Ireland. It's just, as you said, soldiers everywhere.
It's like TV scenes in the background, and it'll be
Yeah.
talking about various bombings, and the teenagers are worried about their GCSEs. It's very in the
Mm.
background. Kind of.
I haven't watched it. Is it good?
It's
very good.
Yeah.
There's one episode where they're all going on holiday and they get really annoyed because the IRA has bombed a bridge, so they close all the roads and they're going to be late for the holiday. So the whole episode they're like, oh, we're going to be late on holiday, bloody IRA. They don't talk about any of the actual serious points of it. It's a really good series. But I think that's probably your guys' most recent reference for the Troubles, in a way, in popular culture.
Yeah.
For me, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
But no, it's really interesting. It's all from, the perspective of Irish teenage girls.
It's kind of going on in the background type thing. It's just sort of going about business, but it's just soldiers.
There's an episode where they get refugees from Chernobyl who are sent to them, and the refugees from Chernobyl are like, this is worse than that. I feel sorry for you guys. You should be refugees over in Russia. But
there's that one bit where they try to integrate the Catholic teenagers with the Protestant teenagers, and they just label all the differences between them, and it's just really funny.
The two don't mix. It's amazing how religion can divide people. They just don't. They will not mix. Prods and Tags, they used to call them. Tags was the Catholics, and the Prods were the Protestants. Prods and Tags. But we used to have a fabulous time, honestly.
But
Perhaps one day it would be good again.
I was going to say, but you wouldn't go back.
I don't get any feeling of longing to go back to Belfast, to be perfectly truthful. I mean, I know it like the back of my hand. And I always felt sorry for the people that were there, because I had such a wonderful time at the right age. Couldn't have been a better age. Everything was, all the stars were in line, if you know what I mean, when I hit Belfast at 17-and-a-half-year-old. It was a wonderful place. And to go out there now, and it's getting better, but it's still there. I can see the hatred, I can understand the hatred.
do you keep in touch with anyone that you met in Northern Ireland?
I did for a while. Two Catholic girls who were, and they're just friends, as opposed to any relationship. And one died, and the other one, it just seemed to, I think she got married and probably had a jealous husband or something like that. Just good fun. Any more?
Can I ask you about the regiment when it finally shut down? Were you still serving then when it became the Rifles?
Became the Rifles.
Yeah.
I was very lucky. It was the last 2 years of my service. No, I got to be truthful. I was glad to leave, and my leaving coincided with the merge really into the Rifles. When I joined the army, there were 52 infantry regiments, 52, and that was back in 1960. And nearly all of those have been merged or dropped or whatever.
Because that's not long after the Devon and Dorset's amalgamated. Because that was 1958, wasn't
58. I joined the regiment 2 years after the amalgamation.
So when
And you still had the Devons and the Dorsets sitting apart from each other in the sergeant's mess and all the rest of it.
I was going to say, what was it like joining so soon after that amalgamation? Were there Devons and Dorsets who
No,
felt how you felt?
by the
about
time I
Rifles?
got, by 63 when I joined the regiment, it was pretty well sorted. Yeah. And I was lucky. I had 40 odd years of a county regiment.
It always makes me laugh because we spoke to Nick a few months ago, very similarly to this, and I accidentally referred to him as a D&D, and he went, "Nope, Dorset." Nope.
He's very proud of being a
Yeah.
Dorset, as I am of being a Devon and Dorset.
I don't think I've ever met a Devon.
We need to get a Devon on.
We need to get a Devon in.
We need to
We
get a
haven't
Devon
got-
by themselves.
I don't know whether you would get.
I don't know if there's.
You'd have to go to Exeter to get a Devon, and
It's not
even
that
then
far.
he would be 80s, in his 80s.
Well, let's go to Exeter and pick the first guy that we find.
We're gonna-
see if he's out in the Devons.
We were talking last week about the kind of questions we might ask you, and one of the things that came up was what it's like coming to a museum that basically tells the story of your entire career. What it feels like, expecting to see things in a museum that are very old, but for you is kind of very recent for you in some cases.
I've got to be absolutely honest. It hasn't really. No, is that? I don't get that at all.
Right.
I don't know why either, really, to be perfectly truthful.
Do you think it would be hard to capture the experience of being in the Devon and Dorset's museum?
I can do it in 5 minutes. I'll meet my mate and I'll say, see you at Wetherspoons for a curry. And the years peel away. And there's me and him, or him and me, or whatever you want to call it. Just, we lapse straight back 30 or 40 years without even noticing. Without even noticing.
Do we have anything that belongs to you on display? Do you know, Flora?
Nope.
Anything from Mick?
We must have pictures of you. I don't know if you've got them out.
You might have them.
Ken Chivers is all over the top floor.
Yeah, yeah.
But
No, I don't think there's anything at all of me as an individual.
But
individually speaking.
We've definitely got photos of you in the archive.
Yes, you have.
Because you did, I think John said you did a lot of work identifying people in pictures at one point.
Yes, I did, yeah.
How long did that take?
Ages. Ages. And you go cross-eyed because you're looking at all these photos. And the trouble is, you're mixing two eras. My era was from 1960 to 1985. That was my, and soldiers who joined the regiment from that day, I wouldn't know. I wouldn't have any affiliation with them. The worst part about my age now is the friends that I serve with, they're dying. They're falling off their perches.
But you'll keep in touch, do you? You'll keep in touch?
We all keep in touch. I still see guys who were in the same room as me when I joined in 1960. I'm still in touch with them. Nice.
Thank you for listening to this week's podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. The Young Historians is a group of 14 to 18-year-olds who really enjoy history and meet up at the Keep Museum every week in order to work on specific projects to further our education.
Thank you very much for listening to this episode of Keeping It Real, a podcast by the Keep Military Museum's Young Historians. Young Historians is a group of 14 to 18-year-olds that meets once a week at the museum